Hey there, Grace Point family. Here we are, week number 4 on our GPRead plan. Hope you're enjoying yourself. I really am. I'm really enjoying looking at how the biblical events happened in order. There's this whole section of Job that we're reading right now that fits into the chronology somewhere here in the early parts of Genesis. That's why we're reading Job right now. We're going to come back to Genesis by the end of this coming week. So as we get into Job this coming week, we are going to see Job give his final response, his final appeal to God about his situation. He's going to do so with a continued belief that God is the one who's sovereign over all of the suffering that he's endured. He's not going to ever divert from that opinion. And he's going to lay out a number of if statements about his own behavior in his own life. So I'd be very interested to hear from you what it is you think about this. Talk to me about it on Sundays or send me an email. I would love to hear from you. Through it all, Job is confused, but still very humble. He knows he doesn't understand everything. Well, then we have this guy who we've not heard from before show up. His name is Elihu. He's a younger guy who comes in to say some things to both Job and to Job's friends. And then he's going to exalt God a lot in a couple of chapters. So pay attention to Elihu and see what you think about his counsel compared to the counsel of the other friends. And then finally, God is going to respond. Honestly, this is the part I've really been waiting for. I love all the things that God says here about himself and the things he says directly to Job. And when you consider Job's situation, that this whole thing came about because of what was happening between God and this accuser who has come to accuse Job, take some time to ponder, what is God really saying to Job? And I'll give you my opinion. I feel like God is saying to Job and to us as well, you are not qualified to make judgments about God. We simply don't have enough information. We don't have the wisdom and the insight that we need in order to make judgments about God's activity and God's behavior. He is God. We are not. Our place as creatures is to be humble before him. Be interested to hear your take on God's response to Job. Now, after the book of Job, we're back into Genesis, and we start in Genesis 12, where Abram receives his calling from God. Abram is the father of the Jewish people. He's the very first one that God calls to himself. Now, pay attention to where Abram comes from. We're told in the book of Joshua that Abram and his ancestors were all idolaters. They worshiped false gods. So take that into account as you hear Abram's story and you see what God calls him to do. Think about Abram's faith. Think about the things he does in response to God. We're going to see a story between Abram and his nephew Lot, who is with him as he begins following God, and how Lot goes to the cities of the plain, separates from his uncle Abram. We're also going to see some mistakes that Abram makes as he goes to Egypt, the ways he deals with his wife, the way he deals with fears of his own that he has. We're also going to see when his nephew Lot is in trouble and is taken away by some kings, Abram steps in to rescue, and he meets a guy with kind of a funny name. His name is Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is referred to both as a king and as a priest. And we get no background on this guy. We don't hear at all where he comes from. And he's called priest of the Most High God, the same reference that has been used about the God Abram serves. And so it's very interesting here. Melchizedek is going to be used in the New Testament in reference to Jesus and the kind of priest Jesus is. He's a priest in the order of Melchizedek. We're going to read about that in the book of Hebrews. So this is a great section of scripture for this coming week. I want to encourage you to keep going. You're doing a great job. I'd love to hear your questions. I'd love to talk to you on Sundays about what you're reading. And I encourage you, talk to others in the Grace Point family about what you're reading. People in your family, people in your circle of friends, your small group, even on Sunday mornings. Let's have conversations centered around these things that we're learning in our GPRead program.